All right, everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into this Reddit thread, and ooh, my gosh, this one is wild.
Yeah, this one's a doozy.
It really is. It's about a blind date gone wrong,
Yeah.
and it just spiraled into this huge conversation about societal expectations and single motherhood, and oh my gosh, even the authenticity of online narratives.
Yeah.
Like, what even is real anymore?
Right. It's like you said, a blind date gone wrong, and it just blew up in the comments.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, we had this guy, let's call him John for simplicity. He goes on a blind date that was set up by his coworker, Richard. So John's at the restaurant waiting, expecting to meet this single woman, and then, boom, she shows up 4 months pregnant.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, turns out she's recently divorced and expecting her first child.
So, okay, hold on. Did this coworker Richard know that she was pregnant? Did John know? Like, what's going on here?
Well, that's the thing. John doesn't explicitly say in his post whether Richard told him beforehand,
Nah.
but it's heavily implied that he had no clue.
Ooh, that's shady.
Right. And that's where things start to get really interesting. Because now we're talking about the ethics of setting someone up on a blind date without disclosing such a major life event. Like,
Is that okay?
yeah, that's the question, right? And the commenters are totally divided. Some are like, oh, it's no big deal. Others are calling it a total betrayal of trust. And then there's this whole other group that thinks Richard might have some ulterior motives going on.
Okay. This is already juicy. I am hooked. What kind of ulterior motives are we talking about?
I'll buckle up because this is where the Richard is the father theory comes in.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. Several commenters are convinced that Richard is actually the father of the baby and that he's trying to set her up with John so he can basically just like wash his hands of the whole situation.
That is messy.
It is. And the comments are just a whirlwind of opinions about Sarah, the woman who's pregnant.
Some people are being super judgmental. Like one commenter, Mag7683, said that she needs to focus on herself and her kid, not picking up baby daddy, #2. Wow, that's harsh. It's like they're forgetting that she's a human being with her own feelings and needs. Just because she's pregnant doesn't mean she has to put her entire life on hold.
Exactly. And then there's the judgment about her dating while still being technically married, even though she's going through a divorce.
Yeah.
Like Misamar1246 wrote, "Who dates pregnant while divorcing?" Fucking insane.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, people, divorce takes time. It's not like you just snap your fingers and everything's finalized.
Right. People are allowed to move on with their lives. And it's not like she's the first person to start dating before a divorce is finalized.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know the details of her situation with her ex-husband. Maybe they've been separated for a while and are just working through the legal stuff. Who knows? But it's not really our place to judge.
Exactly. And this whole situation really makes you think about individual autonomy versus societal expectations. We have all these ideas about how people should behave, especially when it comes to family and relationships. But life is messy and people don't always fit into those neat little boxes.
So true. It's a good reminder that everyone is on their own journey and what works for one person might not work for another. And judging someone based on a few lines in a Reddit post is never going to give you the full picture.
You got that right. We're only getting a tiny glimpse into these people's lives.
Okay, so we've got John feeling totally blindsided by the pregnancy reveal, Sarah facing all this judgment for her dating choices, and Richard lurking in the background as this potential manipulator. Where does the story go from here?
Well, from what I gather, John decides that he's not ready to step into a fatherly role, which honestly seems pretty reasonable given the circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, he went into the date with certain expectations, and those expectations weren't met. He has the right to define his own boundaries and make choices that align with his values.
For sure. And the comments actually show a really wide range of perspectives on this. Some people are super critical of Sarah, like one user, Snowblack Abier, who said that dating while pregnant is diabolical. But then you have others like Complete Peach 3286 who are defending her right to make her own choices.
It's like this one thread has become a microcosm of all these bigger societal debates. We've got traditional values clashing with evolving social norms, anxieties about single parenthood, and even some people who are straight up skeptical about the whole thing.
Wait, really? Someone thinks the story is fake.
Oh yeah, Nuthouse Antiques just comes in with a fake AF declaration, questioning it's all just made up for internet points.
Well, I think their tone is a bit much. They do bring up a valid point about how much fabricated content is out there these days.
Yeah. We always have to remember to be critical consumers of information, especially online. Not everything we read is true.
And even if this story is totally made up, our reactions to it are still interesting. They tell us something about the anxieties and biases that we all carry around about dating and relationships.
So even a fake story can spark a real conversation. That's kind of fascinating.
It is. And those conversations can be super valuable even if they're messy or uncomfortable. They can help us challenge our assumptions, broaden our perspectives, and ultimately make us more empathetic and understanding.
Okay, I love that. So far, we've got drama, judgment, skepticism, and even some sprinkles of wisdom, all coming from this one Reddit thread. What else is there?
Well, there's this one commenter, City Shepherd, who's a 43-year-old widower, and he says that stories like this make him want to remain happily single for the rest of his life.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
His comment really highlights how challenging and anxiety-inducing dating can be these days, right? It's not just about finding someone compatible anymore. It's about navigating this whole web of expectations, societal pressures, and potential pitfalls.
Sometimes it feels easier to just opt out completely.
Totally. But thankfully, not everyone feels that way. We also have Hezel025, who actually found her husband online at 43, and he offers some really great advice for navigating the complexities of modern dating.
Yeah, her comment is a breath of fresh air amidst all the negativity.
Yeah.
It reminds us that finding love and connection is totally possible even later in life, and that there are ways to approach dating with a positive and empowered mindset.
I'm sensing a theme here. It seems like this Reddit thread has really struck a chord with a lot of people. This whole thing about the complexities and challenges of dating in the modern world, is that something you see a lot in your work?
Oh, absolutely. The anxieties, the pressures, the constant bombardment of societal expectations, it comes up all the time. And this Reddit thread with all its drama and conflicting opinions is like a perfect case study for exploring those issues in a safe and analytical space.
I totally agree. And you know what else this whole thing is making me think about? The importance of open and honest communication in any relationship, whether it's a friendship, a romantic partnership, or even a coworker relationship. Being upfront and clear about your intentions and expectations can save so much heartache and drama down the line.
100%. Miscommunication and assumptions are at the root of so many conflicts, and this whole Reddit saga is like a textbook example of how things can go wrong when people aren't on the same page.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Okay, so we've got John feeling blindsided, Sarah facing judgment, and Richard potentially being a manipulator. What else is there to unpack in this story?
Well, I think it's time to dig into some of the more insightful comments and see if we can glean some deeper understanding of the social and psychological dynamics at play here. Like, for example, we have City Shepherds, the widower who wants to stay single. And then there's Hazel025, who found love online and has some great advice to share. I think their perspectives will offer some valuable insights.
I'm intrigued. Let's dive in. All right. So we're back and ready to keep digging into this Reddit rabbit hole. And, one thing that keeps popping up in the comments is this whole concern about financial responsibility. Like, some people are really worried about John getting trapped in a relationship he doesn't want and ending up saddled with all these financial burdens.
Yeah, that fear of entrapment is definitely a recurring theme, and it seems to be fueling a lot of the negativity towards Sarah's decision to date. Some commenters are basically assuming that any man who dates her is automatically signing up to be a financial provider. Not just for her, but for the baby, too.
Right. It's like they're projecting their own anxieties about commitment and financial stability onto the situation.
Exactly. And I think this fear might be even more pronounced because Sarah is a woman. Let's face it, single mothers often bear the brunt of childcare and financial responsibility, and this unspoken expectation that men should be the providers can create a ton of pressure, even in casual dating situations.
It's like they're seeing Sarah's pregnancy as a liability instead of just a part of who she is.
Yeah.
They're reducing her to her circumstances instead of recognizing her as a whole person with her own dreams and desires and ambitions.
Right. It's that tendency to stereotype and oversimplify things that we see so often online, unfortunately. It's always easier to judge and categorize others than to acknowledge the complexity of their lives and experiences.
Oh, for sure. And speaking of judgments, there's this one comment that really stuck with me. Enforcer Mom writes, "Never bring your private life to work." Like, they're blaming John for this whole situation, even though he was the one who got set up.
That's an interesting reaction. It seems to point to this desire to keep our personal and professional lives completely separate, like acknowledging the messiness of human relationships in the workplace somehow threatens the idea of professionalism.
It also speaks to the stigma that still surrounds single mothers in the workplace, right?
Yeah.
There's this underlying fear that they'll be less reliable or less committed to their jobs because of their family responsibilities.
Absolutely. It's a harmful stereotype, but unfortunately it's one that persists. And it really highlights the need for more open and supportive workplace cultures where people feel comfortable bringing their whole selves to work without fear of judgment or discrimination.
Couldn't agree more. And, it's not just about single mothers either. This whole story also reveals a lot about the pressures that men face in the dating world. Like John even mentions, feeling pressured to be the knight in shining armor for Sarah, even though he barely knows her.
That's so common, you know? This expectation that men should always be strong and stoic and ready to step into the role of protector and provider. And while those qualities can be admirable, they shouldn't be mandatory requirements for dating or relationships.
Exactly. Men deserve to express their emotions, set boundaries, and make choices that align with their own needs and desires without feeling pressure to conform to these rigid societal expectations.
For sure. And it's important to remember that these expectations aren't just coming from men themselves. Women often internalize these societal messages too and end up putting pressure on men to fulfill certain roles. It creates this dynamic where both genders are trapped in a cycle of expectations and assumptions.
It's true. It's like these gender roles and expectations are so deeply ingrained in our culture that we often don't even realize how much they're influencing our behavior and perceptions.
And we see those ingrained beliefs playing out in real time in this Reddit thread. All the judgments about Sarah's dating choices, the assumptions about John's financial obligations, the speculation about Richard's hidden motives. It's like everyone is projecting their own anxieties and biases onto this situation.
It's a good reminder that these aren't just abstract social issues. They have real-world consequences, and they're affecting people's lives, their relationships, their careers, their sense of self-worth.
Absolutely. And while there's a lot of negativity and judgment being expressed, it's important to acknowledge that not everyone in the thread is falling into those traps. There are commenters who express genuine empathy for Sarah, recognizing the challenges she's facing and supporting her right to make her own choices.
Like Jubang Yongon, who says she probably feels so alone and just wants a partner to help her through. It's such a simple statement, but it speaks volumes about the power of understanding and compassion.
Right. It reminds us that behind every username and avatar is a real person with their own unique experiences and emotions. It's so easy to get caught up in the anonymity of online interactions and forget that human element.
It's like that quote, "Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle." You never know what someone else is going through, and a little bit of empathy can make a world of difference.
So true. Speaking of empathy, I want to circle back to Hazel025, the commenter who shared her experience of finding love online in her 40s. I think her story is a powerful reminder that there's hope even in the midst of all this dating drama.
Yeah, her advice is so practical and down to earth. She
Mhm.
talks about the pros and cons of different dating sites, the importance of online safety, and the need to be patient and persistent.
And her perspective is so valuable because she's someone who's actually been there and done that. She's not just theorizing about dating, she's speaking from experience. And her willingness to share her wisdom and insights is truly inspiring.
It's a great reminder that there's no right way to date or find love. It's about being open to possibilities, learning from your experiences and staying true to yourself.
And it's about recognizing that even in the often cynical world of online dating, there are genuine connections to be made and authentic relationships to be built.
Well said. You know, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've talked about the complexities of modern dating, the pressures faced by both men and women, the stigma surrounding single mothers, and even the ethics of setting someone up on a blind date without full disclosure. But there's one more layer of this onion I want to peel back. The whole issue of workplace dynamics.
Ah, yes, the Richard factor. His actions have definitely sparked a lot of debate about appropriate boundaries between our personal and professional lives.
The fact that he's bad-mouthing John at work because of what happened on a blind date is a huge red flag. It shows a total lack of respect for personal boundaries and a willingness to use gossip and manipulation to undermine someone's reputation.
It's toxic behavior, and it creates a hostile work environment. Some commenters even suggested that John should report Richard to HR. It's a reminder that even in informal settings like friendships or casual dating, there are still professional boundaries that need to be respected.
And sometimes you have to stand up for yourself, even if it means confronting a friend or a colleague. It's about protecting your own well-being and setting a precedent that this kind of behavior is not acceptable.
I couldn't agree more. As we move towards wrapping up this episode, it's clear that the seemingly simple Reddit story has opened up a Pandora's box of societal issues, psychological insights, and ethical dilemmas. It's amazing how a single blind date can reveal so much about our cultural anxieties, our personal biases, and the complex web of relationships that shape our lives.
Absolutely. And I think it's safe to say that this conversation is far from over. We've only scratched the surface of these complex issues.
And that's the beauty of a good deep dive. It's not about finding all the answers. It's about sparking curiosity, challenging assumptions, and encouraging deeper reflection.
Love that. When we come back, we'll wrap up this episode with some key takeaways and leave you with a final thought-provoking question to ponder. Stay tuned. Okay, everyone. We're back for the final part of our deep dive, and wow, I don't know about you, but after all those twists and turns in that Reddit thread, my head is spinning.
Yeah, it's been quite the journey through those comments, that's for sure. We saw everything from harsh judgments and skepticism to genuine empathy and even some really solid dating advice.
I know, right? But you know what really stood out to me? It's just how much this story made us confront our own biases and assumptions about dating single mothers, the roles men and women should play in relationships. It's a lot to unpack.
You hit the nail on the head. It's so easy to get caught up in the drama and gossip, but when we step back and think, okay, what are my preconceived notions about all of this? That's when the real learning happens.
Right. Like, am I giving everyone the benefit of the doubt, or am I jumping to conclusions based on like a few sentences and some societal stereotypes that I've internalized?
Exactly. And, this whole deep dive has been a fantastic exercise in critical thinking. We had to sift through all these conflicting opinions, try to understand the psychology behind certain comments, and even question whether the story was even real. It's like a masterclass in navigating online narratives and figuring out what's fact and what's fiction.
Totally. So as we wrap up this episode, what are some key takeaways that our listeners can take with them? Like, what can we learn from all of this?
Well, I think one of the biggest takeaways is the importance of empathy and understanding, remembering that everyone's on their own unique journey, and what might seem like a bad decision to us might actually make perfect sense to someone else given their circumstances and life experiences.
Right. We need to be more compassionate and less judgmental, both online and offline, putting ourselves in other people's shoes and trying to see the world from their perspective.
Couldn't agree more. And another important takeaway is the power of clear and honest communication, whether it's a friendship, a romantic relationship, or even just interactions with coworkers. Being upfront about your intentions and expectations can save a lot of potential heartache and drama later on.
And speaking of drama, Richard's behavior is a perfect example of what not to do. Don't set people up on blind dates without their full consent, and definitely don't badmouth them at work if things don't go your way.
Boundaries, people. Boundaries are essential. It's about protecting yourself and setting a clear precedent that disrespectful behavior is not okay.
Okay, so we've got empathy, communication, boundaries. 3 amazing tools for navigating this crazy thing called life. But before we sign off, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought-provoking question.
Ooh, I love that thought-provoking question. Lay on me.
So this whole Reddit thread sparked a huge debate about the right way to date, especially for single parents. Some people were adamant that Sarah shouldn't be dating at all, while others defended her right to make her own choices.
Right. Remember Mag7683, who said she needed to focus on her kid, versus Complete Peach 3286, who was all about Sarah's autonomy. It was a clash of values for sure.
Exactly. So here's the question. If you were in Sarah's shoes, newly divorced, pregnant, and facing single motherhood, how would you approach dating? Would you wait until after the baby's born? Would you be totally upfront about your situation right from the start? Would finding a partner who's ready to be a father figure be a top priority? There's no right or wrong answer here, but it's definitely something to think about.
That's a great question. It really all comes down to self-awareness and knowing your own values. What are your needs? What are your non-negotiables in a relationship? And how can you communicate those clearly and confidently to potential partners?
Couldn't have said it better myself. So we've reached the end of our deep dive. I hope this episode gave you some things to ponder. And if you're looking for more insightful discussions about relationships, personal growth, and just navigating the complexities of modern life, I highly recommend checking out Shauna Plage's YouTube channel and her podcast, Voices of the Soul.
She's an amazing resource. Her content is always thought-provoking and inspiring.
Definitely. So be sure to subscribe to her channel, give this video a thumbs up, and share it with your friends. We'll see you next time for another fascinating deep dive.